turning things over to God. And my concern is a little bit more at home with AA and how a lot of us want to have control of AA. And how are we maybe needing to turn it back over to God and allow Him to be speaking through our group conscience, and truly us being trusted servants and being open to that power. And maybe He'll know better what I'm talking about than I do.
Oh, that's a great question.
That's a great question.
I think that's a really good question, and I'm sure we've all encountered that on both sides of the feeling.
Would you repeat the question, Sandy?
Okay. The question had to do with being able to turn AA over to God and not want to control it, or to be in a group or a setting where someone else appears to want to control everything. And how do we turn AA over to God so that we're comfortable no matter where we go? Those of you that have moved, you realize every time you move, they're doing it wrong there. I mean, I moved to Tampa, they didn't even have the poker chips were wrong that they handed out. The colors were all wrong. I tried to correct it, and I got nowhere. They're still doing it wrong, and I've been there 15 years, so you can see it didn't seem to help. And I think this is really a remarkably deep question, because we all get so enthusiastic about AA, and we want to make sure it turns out right, and that things are a success, whatever it be, a home group or a convention. And so we come up with a plan to make sure it succeeds, but there's someone else there who doesn't agree with our plan. And you can sense this feeling that person one wants it done this way, person two wants this speaker, person one wants it to be a discussion meeting, person two doesn't want decaf coffee, person three. And so we can practice these principles right here in our own home groups or anywhere. Now, I have been, I don't know if this is one of my systems, and I'm answering the question to the gentleman that came up here. I have been in groups that I adore. They just had the energy, it was just wonderful. But no group can sustain that forever. They're subject to change, and personality changes. Some old-timer dies, and we didn't realize that was where all the energy came from. And there's a tendency when that happens to try and cause it to go back the way it was. Have any of you ever tried to do that, and you get that energy going, and we got to get this? I remember Annandale, France out there, when Buck Doyle died up where we were. We tried to keep it, and it just kept getting worse. The harder people tried, and I think I was part of that. I had maybe 10 years or 15 or something like that. And I realized that what we probably should have done was turn the whole thing over to 5 people with less than 3 years. And have all new energy take the thing over and see where it went. But wherever it went, it would have all this enthusiasm. And so one of the things that I have done is to go start a new group, if I'm in the middle of that, because I have learned over the years the hopelessness of recapturing something that is in the process of changing. And so I get 4 or 5 people, and we look around, and Tampa had very few speaker meetings. So since I've been down there, we've started 3 new speaker meetings, and they're big. And it's like Saturday night party to go, 300 people, yay, it's all this celebration. So one way that I've done that is start another group. And I think we learned that in the history. You don't like, two resentments in a coffee pot, is that what it takes to get another meeting started? And then we should probably take seriously, when they're talking about a group conscience meeting, that behind that group conscience meeting is God. And we probably should take more time for quiet time when we're getting ready to come up with how we want to vote on something and see if we can't ask God to help us understand the other person's point of view rather than trying to jam our point of view down the group's throat and sit back. And I know that we're kind of guilty of that we don't always take a break and ask God to come into our group conscience meeting. By all just sit there and, do you feel how we ought to go on this, and get rid of our own ego in the middle of that group conscience. I mean, I don't know about you all, but boy, you can see the room dividing up, the pros and cons on this thing, and the winners are going to get this thing and the losers are going to feel bad. And it's too bad when it goes that way. And you can see what's wrong, we left God out. And what's wrong in our personal lives, we leave God out. I mean, it's always that's what's wrong. Any of you that are Chuck Chamberlain fans, I happen to be, he talks about that there's only one problem that includes all problems, and that's not being close enough to God. And boy, it's hard to be humble enough to realize that that's the truth in all cases. You just get tired of hearing the word God. And, it's just like, okay, God, now let's talk about me for a while. I don't know if we addressed that question. Was that close? Okay, thank you, because I thought it was a real good one. Yes. We got a written ones.
Altruism.
Oh. Bill speaks of altruism early in the big book. Could you elaborate? I can't really elaborate on what he meant. I know that he used the passage. I think it's part of a spiritual awakening. Up until then, there's no way to do good deeds that aren't selfish. And this is a hard lesson to learn. Bill talks about it, I think, in the third step, where we're so self-centered that the only way we know what kindness is to learn it from other people. Oh, I see, that was a kind act. Good, because I want to be known as kind, so I'll learn how to do kind acts. Oh boy, I did some kind acts and people called me kind. But if I had to learn what the kind acts were, I wasn't kind. The only way I can be kind is if God makes me kind. Then I'm doing his kind work. Do you follow what I'm saying? And so the same thing with altruism. If it's not coming out of a spiritual awakening, it can't help but have some selfish motive involved. I don't care what it is that we do, if we're not doing it from a God center, it's helping us somehow. And we don't even know it yet until we finally see the motive hidden under the motive. And this is why I donated this, or this is why I donated the time, this is why I did it. It was, yes, I wanted to help him out, but I wanted the word to pass over to this guy because I'm trying to get a job with him. And if he found out that I did that through his son and his cousin, who happened to be there, that I happen to know were going to be there, then it turns out that the reason I did it was to get the job, but it didn't look that way. And so this whole thing, I'll give you another example. I hope I don't use up all the question time, but this is something I've been working on the last month or so. And it has to do with self-centeredness. And I really haven't got it all figured out, but I'm going to give you my best shot. I think self-centeredness, you know how Clancy calls alcoholism a disease of perception? I think self-centeredness is a problem of perception. When you look around and you're the center of everything, you can't help but be self-centered because that's what you're looking at. And when you start out as a little kid and you look around the backyard, there's the tree back there, there's this, there's the neighbor's house, there's the front over there. What's the center of everything that you're looking at? You are. You're just here turning around. So you're the center of all of that. And they want us to stop being self-centered. Self-centeredness is the root of our problem. Well, if it looks like you're the center of everything, how can you stop being self-centered? So we have to have a spiritual awakening and see God as the center, or we can't stop being self-centered. And a lot of times we talk about how to fix self-centeredness. Go help someone else. You ever hear that one? Go work with someone else. It will fix self-centeredness. No, it'll fix the symptom of self-centeredness, which is I feel terrible about myself. And when I help other people, I feel better about myself, but I haven't fixed self-centeredness. I just treated the symptom, if you understand. The reason I'm working with someone else is to help me feel better and get rid of my self-centeredness. You follow what I'm saying? And so when it says work with another alcoholic, nothing ensures immunity from drinking like working with another alcoholic. It doesn't say nothing ensures a connection with God like working with another. It's stopping us from drinking. That's a big deal. We have to stay stopped from drinking, but it doesn't necessarily reflect spiritual progress. So when we have a spiritual awakening, we can't help but help other people. We're just, what could I do for you? What could I do for you? It's just coming out of us. We're not fixing anything. And I love when they asked Chuck Chamber, why do you do all this? Do you remember his answer? For fun and for free. I do it all for fun. I don't do it to fix self-centeredness. I do it for fun. And the reason it's fun is he maintained his connection with his higher power so that every day when he got up and looked around, he saw God's world with God at the center, and he didn't see a self-centered world with him as the center. So it was perception. It's what he saw that caused him to have to fix self-centeredness. So we're back to the same thing. We can't fix self-centeredness by doing kind things. We can fix the symptom, but we can't fix self-centeredness. The only way is to be connected to God so that we see God as the center of everything. When we see it that way, there is no self-centeredness and there's nothing to fix. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. And the kind acts that we're doing are for fun. They have nothing to do with making us feel better. We already feel fine. We don't have to do any of those things in order to feel better. So it's an interesting thing that it's all perception. It's causing all of our problems. And a couple of years ago, I started with this. I made this a policy that when a person I'm sponsoring comes to me with a problem, my job is to convince them they don't have a problem. They're seeing it wrong. We're going to go take another look at this, take another look at this, take another. And then, you know, when you finish, they go, well, yeah, if you look at it that way. Yeah. Do you see what I'm saying? Well, if you look at it that way, I really have a good deal. So when you take this perception thing, you can really have a lot of fun with it because it would apply to not only self-centeredness, patience. Patience is a self-induced necessity which comes about when I incorrectly determine that the present moment is awful. And it's going to be improved sometime in the future when certain things happen. So I made the determination that this moment in time isn't perfect, which it is. I just don't know how to look at it correctly. I need to go to a spiritual advisor. I need to go to a sponsor so that he can help me see, wow, I'm sober, I'm in AA, Isn't this wonderful? I'm getting my hip done next Friday. Today's a wonderful day. I don't have to wait till next Friday. Go, boy, next Friday am I going to be? But every once in a while, when it really hurts, I'll go, boy, I can hardly wait to get rid of this pain. And now I've found something wrong with the present moment. Now I'm impatient that next Friday comes. So I generated the requirement for patience. Do you see what I'm saying? If you just use perception, you suddenly see there's a different way of looking at everything. So I could pray for patience, or I could pray to see that the present moment is fine and I won't need any patience. So there's a big difference between the two of them. Now, I don't know how we got off on that, but...
Somebody else have a question?
Come on up. Oh, we got one here. Come on up and stand behind.
Yeah.
You'll be ready. And then I have one in writing.
Okay. It says, why do we not talk more on the God of our understanding?
I'm Gary. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Gary.
Sandy, suppose in this age when I'm so easily offended, I'm an atheist. I don't like to say the Lord's Prayer. So me and a couple other people get together, and we found a AA meeting, or what we call an AA meeting. We're not going to say the Lord's Prayer. As a matter of fact, but we want to be listed in the AA meeting schedule in our city. And we want to be listed as an atheist meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And furthermore, we'd like to have some literature too that would say how things can be for us, because after all, shouldn't we be accepted like everybody else?
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad we didn't get a hard question. Me and my big mouth. Well, all I can do is, and this actually ties into this question that I have here about why don't we talk about the God of our understanding and not about a dogmatic God? They're all in the same boat. And if we follow the AA literature, we find that everybody who comes in here has a problem with God, one form or another. We went to church and we hate it and it's no good. I tried God, forget him, he's no good. I don't want to hear about God. I hate religion. I hate the Catholics. I hate the blah, blah, blah. We got everything. And yet we're all welcome. And we come in. And you can be an agnostic, an atheist, an ex-believer, a non-believer. You can be all these things and we come in. And what does Bill suggest that we do? And I can see these lines in the big book. Let's not worry about that now. Isn't that a wonderful way to say, let's not deal with that now. You're too new. You're just getting sober. Just keep an open now. We're in no position to do that. And then we allow the meetings and the miracles at the meetings that appear to everyone's eyes. They hear a kid their own age over at the other side of the room. I came in here, I hated God, and I just went along with what they had to say here. Now, oh my God, I can't believe what happened to me. And this, the guy's looking over there. You can see the persuading or the transformation being done by somebody else. It's being done by the visual and audio proof. It's very difficult to see a miracle and keep your old ideas. It's very easy to argue at a table, blah, 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 about the topic. But when you're subjected to a steady flow of miracles, it's very difficult to keep your old ideas. It gets more and more difficult the longer you're in. And then when it happens to you, it's impossible to keep your old ideas because you can't explain what happened to you in terms of your old ideas, whatever they were concerning this higher power. And so we have this wonderful thing of saying it's a higher power of your understanding. And we really mean whatever you care to come up with is fine. but you have no understanding of this higher power. Because the only understanding you can have comes from experiencing the higher power. You can learn about God from religions, but in spirituality and in religions too, it's when you experience God. You experience the presence of something in your life. And if after you experience that, you still want to call it a doorknob, that's fine. I was with my doorknob the other night, and we were praying and all that. But generally, you find that after this happens, you aren't comfortable with labeling it a doorknob or John Wayne or the spirit of the universe or any of those things. You find yourself from the inside out being led to say God. And in this 12th step, in the 12 and 12, is a wonderful sentence. Bill says, and we know from experience that the man who is still an agnostic and calls his home group his higher power will someday soon come to know and love God and call him by name. Did anybody tell him to call him by name? Nope. Nobody had anything to do with it. It just happened. It's an inside job. And we end up using that word, God as I understand him, Spirit, whatever it is. But what it is, it's the experience that the person had. When they had this awakening, when they had this transformation, when everything suddenly looked different, when they suddenly saw everything differently, they no longer could keep their old ideas about this thing called God or whatever you want to call it. And so we have a completely open mind as far as atheists, agnostics, whatever it is. And I think that's a wonderful policy and that we should keep it. And if someone we have an atheist in our group, he's been sober for years and years and years, and he talks more spiritual stuff than I've ever heard, but he prefers to still be called an atheist. So I go, hi, atheist, and I'm glad to have you there. And we had one up in Washington. He gave the most wonderful talk there was, and when he finished his talk, he said, God bless you all, and went over there and sat down. And so there's nothing, this is wonderful. But now when we get to an atheist group, this is another horse of a different color. And now when we get here, I am just giving you my own personal opinion. So now we suddenly separated from what's in the AA literature and all of that, because there isn't anything in the AA literature about a group. And so this is how I thought it through. I thought it through that this is a group of people who don't want to change their mind. They don't want to give spirituality a chance. They want to keep their old ideas and ask us to carve out a special part of AA, and we'll call it the not God part. And I think it's impossible. There is no not God part. We'll give them the 12 steps, and they can have their own thing. It's just our whole literature would have to be changed. I mean, how could you read the big book and leave God out? You'd be scratching something out of every page on it. So the program, and we'd have to change the disease concept. We'd have to change the chapter of the agnostic. We have a disease that only a spiritual awakening can conquer. We'd have to change it, a spiritual awakening or man. And so it's going on up in New York, and they want to have their own literature and all that. And this is just my own opinion. We're going to have a meeting with our inner group that if there ever is a group in our area and they want to get listed in the directory, we're not going to do it. Now, that's just a very personal, local decision. It's going to be up to everybody, and hopefully the problem won't even show up. It'll run out of energy. But everybody's welcome here, and probably all of us were either semi-atheist or agnostic when we got here. How could you not be? So I hope I didn't start a controversy. But nobody left the room, so. All right. Could you ask an easier question?
Well, I'm not sure you answered his.
You wanted me to be
You want
stronger.
some more time?
No.
I'd like to ask you about two things. One is the process of surrender.
Surrender.
The process of surrender as we have longer periods of sobriety. I had a relapse after 6 years, and I know why I did. And also, I would like to ask you about your thoughts about AA today versus AA 25 years ago, and was specifically singleness of purpose. And
Okay.
I'm asking an easy question.
I realize that. All right.
Singleness of purpose.
I got
and,
you.
And the blue card, and then, you know.
I got you.
Thank you, Ed. Hilton Head, yes.
It's almost impossible to discuss singleness of purpose without pissing somebody off. So I might as well get that out of the way and then get down to. This is my best shot at it. Way back in the beginning, they realized that these 12 steps would probably fix any problem. They were that powerful. Because they are working on all our other character defects, not just alcohol. So they realized this could probably fix gambling addiction. It could probably fix sex addiction. It could probably fix overweight problems. It could probably fix drug addiction. It could probably fix shopping addiction. It could fix a lot of different things. So the question was, should we make it a multi-purpose program or a single-purpose program? Should we just deal with the alcohol problem here and authorize, freely give the 12-step program to any group that wanted to borrow it with our blessing? And they chose the latter. They chose to have this be where you come for an alcohol problem and you go to OA for an overeating problem. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the New York office has handed out permission to 143 different groups using our 12 steps on addictions that they have. And so singleness of purpose means that if you have an overeating problem and are an alcoholic, we ask that while you're here at an AA meeting, you primarily limit your discussion to your alcohol problem and identify yourself as an alcoholic instead of an overeater. It's a courtesy thing. It's a courtesy thing because our strength comes from narrowing the focus down to the one problem. And the key to solving this problem is a thing called identification. And identification is the essential ingredient in establishing the confidence with a new member. And if you remember how it goes, anytime you have a problem and you go somewhere to get help with it, this is why AA is so different. When you go to ask for help for your problem, the person says to you, tell me all about it. Right? A therapist, all those people, psychologists.
Actually, 4 minutes.
What's that?
On the
6
tape.
minutes left. 6 minutes? I thought we were going to do 2 tapes.
Keep going.
You didn't do 2 tapes? Go ahead. Oh, all right. Well, we don't have to get it all on tape. Right. Okay. When we go with our problem, they ask us to tell us all about the problem. In AA, it's different. When you go on a 12-step call, and we call on Johnny, the alcoholic, we go, Johnny, I'm here from AA. Let me tell you about me. We don't even ask Johnny about him. We tell him our story. Let me tell you, I'm an alcoholic. Let me tell you what my life was like. I used to hide vodka in the freaking toilet. And then I did this, and then I was afraid at night, and then I threw up, and then I couldn't tell my parents, and I couldn't tell anybody, and it was a secret, and I couldn't. And as we tell the story, this person identifies. They identify, and the stronger the identification, the more that person trusts this program and is willing to do the impossible, which is to turn their better judgment over to the program. They're giving up control of their life. You don't give that up easily unless you totally trust and identify with the person and the program that you have just encountered. It was so important when I was new, and they knew that the person they were going to call on was a periodic drinker. They would try and find a periodic drinker to go on the 12-step call because the identification would be so much stronger. Because if I got there and the guy said, oh, I stop for 3 months at a time all the time, I'd go, what the hell is that? What do you mean you stop? How the hell do you do that? You could see we wouldn't be connecting too well. We wouldn't be connecting too well. And so if I went over there and called on him and I said, let me tell you my story. I have the worst problem with needles. I put so many needles in blah, blah, blah. Or I have the worst time purging. When I stick my finger down my throat, who the hell are you? I don't know. So we limit everything to our alcoholic problem to establish this process of identification, and that's when it's the strongest, and the person will then be more likely to do all the steps and get this spiritual awakening. Without the identification, we tend to hang around here and see if something rubs off. We don't have the willingness to make the full investment into a spiritual transformation. It gets weakened by diluting the point of contact to 3 problems or 4 problems. This problem became a problem for AA when the treatment centers came along. I don't want to blame them, but they decided to lump all addiction into one and they said it's all the same. Doesn't matter what you're addicted to, it's all the same. So people were arriving here with 30 days under their belts already, having been given the information that all addictions were the same, and then they ran into us with our narrow-mindedness. And we ran into conflicts when people wanted to be a drug addict and be welcome here. And it's too hard. It's too hard because once it got started, we had a lady come in. She had an overeating problem. She said, I understand it's open to everybody now. You know, and then somebody told me, this is just a joke. A gambler arrived here and asked us to stop using poker chips. Yeah, I'll raise you on that. So, what we're asking for is for anyone who is new, who has other problems, to study our traditions and out of the goodness of your heart, cooperate. Nobody's jamming anything down anybody's throat. Everybody is welcome. But if we keep explaining the 5th tradition until people understand, we have the feeling that out of the goodness of their heart, they will limit their identification to alcoholic and they will just talk about alcohol while they're here. And we think that that ensures the future of our program in the best fashion that we can, because if it does get where we're going to take on 10 or 15 different problems, there's a real danger it'll get so weak that we won't know what the hell we're all connected to. And that's all. The big thing is that we love everybody to come here. We just have a little tiny favor to ask when you do. And isn't that big a favor? The second half of that had to do with surrender, or the first half, which was surrendering and then surrendering later on. And oddly enough, I really think that the discussion on step 6 had a lot to do with surrender. Surrender, there's a great feel. I love to picture that sometimes when I go to a treatment, there's a lot of young people out there. I say, reach in your pocket. We will do anything that's asked of us. That's surrender. And it's easier in the beginning, which is what you were talking about. In the beginning, the odds are so bad against us. We go, okay, I give up. No, wait a minute. Now we feel a little better. I'm a little more capable than I was during that seizure. I feel a little stronger about myself, and I think I'll just take this little piece back. I want to put some conditions on my unconditional surrender. I just don't think dating her in your 3rd month is a good idea. And what do? We go home and go, what does that old fart know about? He doesn't even remember being young. He doesn't understand the qualities that she has. I could see him. You should have seen how she conducted herself in treatment. She knew all the answers, and I think this will work out just fine. Boom. And then we come, boy, I'll never do that again. I'll tell you, that was, who's that over there in the corner? Oh, by the way. And so we see ourselves taking back the surrender that was so strong in the beginning. And I think that first hour on step 6 in particular, let's see if we can turn that surrender back, because it wants to go the other direction. We want to put more conditions on it. The stronger we feel we've gotten, and the more we've been here, and the more people trust us, the more, the whole thing, then the more we're capable of our own thinking and our own judgment and all these things. I really like to run everything by friends. That's one of the policies I have, is to try and never make a decision on my own. I mean, I make the decision to go to the bathroom or not. But anything more important than that, I try to run it by somebody in about a 40-second phone call. Joe, can I run something by you? Blah, 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 blah. And I'll talk about that tonight because it has to do with the 10th step. But I think involving other people on a regular basis, getting feedback, it's such a blessing rather than to make decisions all on our own. Is there any more? Okay. I think I answered this when we talked about God of singleness of purpose and God of our understanding. We're at the end of the time, right? Okay. Thank you all.